Here we are, May 2019's squash tips. 14 squash tips to make your game jump to the next level. Now, these were originally posted on Instagram, so if you're an Instagram user, you can find the link in the text description, or you can simply search for me as Squash Coach Philip, and then you can get the tips on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays directly. Now, my favourite tip from this month is the squash boasts, so look out for that one later in the video, and make sure you tell me what your favourite tip is from this video. And just to remind you, I will be reviewing this Gray's Innovation Classic later this week or early next week, depending on when you watch this video, so very soon actually. And then behind me you can see another bunch of rackets. I've got 3 more Gray's rackets to review plus 2 Ashaways, so look out for those soon. Anyway, let's get started with those tips. These are the balls used when you play on a glass court, and we're going to come back to those in a moment. I took a complete break from squash for 13 years, and when I got back into it, I realised that one of the things that I'd missed the most was the sound of a beautifully struck ball hitting the strings and then hitting the front wall. And the best sound of all is when these balls hit the glass court. Now, I haven't played on a glass court for 6 years, and before that was probably 10 years, but I keep these balls in the house just in case I get the opportunity to play on one again. Now, I'm sure that you would all take the opportunity if it presented itself, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to actively go out and look for opportunities to play on a glass court. It is a wonderful experience, and ultimately that's what sports should be about, experiences. So go and look for those courts in your area and find out if you can play on one. The next time you do a boast and drive session, I'd like you to change the approach. In the past, you've probably been playing quite competitively where you're trying to hit the best shot possible. Now, I want you to work cooperatively with each other. See how many shots you can hit consecutively with no mistakes. But you need to work within certain limits. For example, the person driving must make the ball bounce past the service box and within the service box width, and hopefully coming off the back wall. The person boasting must hit a 2-wall boast, not a 3-wall boast, and it must be below the cut line on the front wall. When you can do 20 or 30 with no mistakes, you can either increase the number, of course, or you can reduce the size available. So only half the service box width and an artificial line on the front wall for the boasts. I'm sure you're thinking, oh, this will be quite easy, but it's actually harder than being competitive. At the time of this recording, the European Team Championships are being held in the UK in Birmingham, both men and women, and they are being live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, which is where I've watched them. Over the last couple of days, I've watched about 12 games and I have thoroughly enjoyed it, but I know that if I were there in person, I would have had much more fun. So I encourage you, in the strongest possible terms, at least once a year, try to go and watch some professional squash. And it doesn't even have to be on a glass court. The money that you might spend on a lesson, use that to get to the event and buy the tickets. Now, besides being fun just to be at the event, your game will actually improve. Not only will you be motivated and energized, but through some intangible osmosis, you will get better. I can almost guarantee the next time that you go and play squash after watching a live event, you will play fantastic. Go and watch professionals play squash. One shot I've seen being played quite a lot in the European Team Championships is a combination between a cross-court drive and a cross-court volley. I've seen it mostly on the backhand, and it can be quite difficult to play after the ball has come off the back wall, and it's obviously quite difficult to play when it's tight to the wall. Now, it's aimed so that it hits the side wall just behind the service box and at least head height, and it forces your opponent to have to either take the ball off the side wall behind them almost, or let the ball come off the back wall. Imagine a situation where you're hitting some straight backhand drives and your opponent is stepping in and volleying. Playing one of these cross courts then forces them to be more centrally located on the tee, thereby making your backhand straight drives a little bit more effective. I can almost guarantee that club players don't practice this type of return, and you might even get winners or at least weak shots. Try it. Another thing I've noticed about watching the European Team Championships is how different each game is, especially within the same match. And I believe that club players could learn a lot from that concept. If you have just lost a game, you need to change it. Now, you probably could say to me, oh, but I've got this long-term plan. But the reality is you probably need to change it. Now, a lot of people outside of squash think that squash is quite boring, but I actually think that squash has more variety than tennis or badminton, for example. We hit the ball a wider range of speeds, we hit the ball a wider range of heights, and we hit the ball a wider range of widths. And we should embrace the variety that we have available to us. So the next time you play a match, whatever game that you lose, make sure the next game you play, you're playing in a completely or at least a significantly different way to the one you lost. Embrace the variety. Inside of us is a number. That number represents the average number of shots per rally that we hit that we are comfortable with. Now, obviously that number is closely related to your fitness, but not exclusively. It's related to your mental strength as well. Now, I've discussed patience before, and this is a practical application of that. I want you to become much more aware of the average number of shots you play in a rally and actively work to increase that. Now, let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that you simply keep rallies going and hit the ball to the back. What I'm suggesting is that you stop playing those silly shots that you know better players wouldn't play. The higher your number, the better the player you are. This is a video for advanced players. Now, have you ever seen professionals, just before they hit the ball, they give the racket a little bit of a shake? Can't see it very well in this kind of camera angle, but of course they would be in a different position. Now, what do they do it for? They do it to reinforce the feeling of sensitivity. If you were to give me a racket and say, Philip, what do you think of this? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my hand and make these little movements. I'm going to turn it around, because that's important too, and I'm going to get the feel for it, a little bit like you do with the barbecue tongs. Now, players do this unconsciously. They probably don't even know they're doing it. So if you don't do it and you start to do it, I am curious to know whether you feel it helps you get more control out of the ball. So please tell me in the comments. And the last thing to tell you is don't do it too much. It's a very small movement. Watch this. If he had fallen, he would have died. Apparently he was 250 meters up. And this is a perfect example of focusing on the action and not on the potential results. If you are thinking about the consequences of an action, you can't be thinking about the action itself. Successful people use potential results as inspiration and motivation to work smarter and harder. But during the match, they focus solely on game plans and performing. That's why you see some players genuinely surprised when they win a match. Try to forget the outcome and focus solely on performing. The next time you train, either alone, with a partner, or in a group, make sure you have planned your training session. Not only will you save time, but your training will be more beneficial. The better the plan, the better the training. Of course, you might not know what you need to work on or the exact way to do it, but that's another challenge. Take a few minutes, ideally the day before your session, and plan what you're going to do and how long each thing will take. It's so much better than trying to decide as you're standing on court. Here is a partially completed training plan. Yours doesn't have to have the court drawings, but it helps. Each routine was 8 minutes long with an optional break for a sip of water. I stuck it on the back of the door inside the court, but both players had already reviewed it and knew what was going to happen. Become a better player by becoming a better planner. The ability to concentrate can be improved, and most players concentrate better with less distraction. The next time you train with a partner, agree the routines beforehand and the times, including the breaks, and then spend the next 45 minutes or so training. No talking, no joking, no using your phone, nothing. Be warned, it can be hard. Sure, during most matches there are interruptions and chat, but you need to develop the ability to concentrate for long periods of time without being distracted. You improve your concentration by concentrating. It only takes a second or so to lose a rally, and all of the work that you put into that rally has probably been lost simply because a lack of concentration for less than a second. Squash is just as much a mental game as it is a physical. Recognize it, accept it, and train for it. I've talked about lobbing before, and no doubt I'll talk about it again. But for this moment, I just want to tell you or remind you how tiring returning lobs can be. Hitting the ball above your head probably accounts for less than 20% of the shots in a match, including service returns. If you've ever done a backcourt pairs routine where both of you stand at the back, hitting very high volleys back to each other, trying to force a mistake, you'll know how tiring it is. And let's not forget the mental aspect here. Thinking that you've put your opponent under pressure by moving them to the front, only to find that they lob the ball and then put you under pressure, is mentally draining. Club players simply don't train for those high shots. Take advantage of that and play high lobs against your opponent, but make sure you practice them too. Summer's here, which means our match commitments have probably dropped significantly. This means we have the perfect opportunity to improve our squash. You need to be brutally honest with yourself and work on things that you need to do, not things that you like to do. With that said, here are 3 ideas to get you started. Number 1, mental training. Never neglect the mental aspect of squash. I've already made a video called Introduction to Mental Imagery. Watch it and start that process, but there are other mental training exercises that you can do. Number 2, use the summer to work on your skill. Do lots of solo practice, change the technique if you've got something that's limiting you, go and find a coach if necessary. And number 3, do something different. Squash is quite repetitive. It's not good for the knees, the hips and the back. And you want to get outside, do some rowing, do some cycling, do something that you don't normally do that improves your fitness but will give your body a chance to rest as well. In the previous video, I gave you 3 ideas for things to work on during the summer, and I'm going to continue that theme with this video. Last week, I watched part of a match on the PSA Squash TV YouTube channel. It was James Willstrop against somebody else. I don't remember who, I'm sorry. For the whole of the first game, he did not hit one single boast. Think about that. Not only did he not choose to hit a boast, but he was not forced to hit a boast. For club players, that would be a really difficult thing to do. But imagine just for a moment that you said, for 1 month this summer, I'm not going to hit any boasts. What would happen is, when you get into the back corner, you would actively try to hit the ball down the wall instead of just accepting that you can boast it. Try it for a month and you might find that you can get more balls straight down the wall than you ever thought possible. 2 more ideas for your summer training. Number 1 is strength, specifically your core, your back and your legs. Take the summer to become much stronger. Not only will your footwork get much better, but you will play much better as well. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube, so learn how to get stronger. And I don't just mean doing lots of ghosting, I mean actual strength, and you don't even need to use weights. The second idea is this, which is a Swiss ball, which is, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest pieces of exercise equipment ever created. Use it to improve your balance. If you are not very well balanced when you step down to hit the ball, you won't hit a solid shot. There are lots of exercises you can do to improve your balance. If you think the content of my videos is useful, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on notifications. This is a playlist of the technical aspects of squash, which probably interests you if you've watched this video. This is a video that YouTube thinks is a really good fit for you. Thanks for watching, and remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya!